So yes, I think let's begin the session. Welcome once again to Café New Canadians. We're back in 2021 after a short break, after sessions in December. And we're so excited to bring lots more exciting sessions for you as part of Café New Canadians. Today, the first session that we're doing this year is Career Planning and Networking Tips for 2021. And we have lots of interesting discussions lined up for you in the chat today. Before that, this virtual chat is brought to you by New Canadians. New Canadians is a TV and web-based show. We air our episodes on Omni TV. So if you're in Canada, if you're watching us from Canada, you can watch us on TV as well. And you can also check out our website, newcanadians.tv, and our YouTube channel, youtube.com/newcanadians, where we keep posting our videos, interesting content, and do follow us on social media, tag us in your journey, and that way you can also stay updated about our upcoming sessions. I'm your host for today, Shruti Dargan, and I'm pleased to welcome two amazing guests who will be joining us for this session on career planning and networking. We've got Amy Davies. She is the CEO and founder of First 30, which is an onboarding and outplacement company. We've also got Brent Edwards. He's a professional networking advisor and has his own venture, Brent Canada Experiences. So welcome to both of you, and it'll be an interesting chat that we will have tonight. Let's get talking a little about the topic. So the topic, again, as I said, was career planning and networking tips. What better time to actually discuss this topic than when we've just started the new year, right? Mm-hmm. This is the best time to be planning ahead and deciding how one can approach career planning and networking differently with this new year. So welcome to both of you. And as we start talking to our guest, to our speakers over here today, I'll remind the viewers joining us that if you do have questions, and it'll be nice to have some, please do post them in the Q&A section on Zoom if you're joining us here. We're also live streaming this event on YouTube. So please do share those questions in the chat box if you're joining us from there. So once again, a very warm welcome to you, Amy and Brent.
Great.
How are
Thanks,
you?
Shruti. Good to see you again, Amy.
Yeah, you too.
So let's get, before we dive deep into the topic, it'll be nice to hear from the two of you, a brief introduction. And also, I know personally that both of you are doing some great work in the area that also serves newcomers and immigrants to Canada. So please tell us a little about what you do and why you got interested in this area. So we'll start with you, Amy.
Okay, sure. So a few years ago, I published a book called A Spark in the Dark, all about having a successful career in a world where we're losing and changing jobs every 2 to 3 years. So I call that a reorg world. And then from that, I launched First 30. I work with businesses who are going through transition, so either laying off staff or onboarding. And I work with the team members who are exiting organizations and help them get over the job loss and get back to work. So get back to meaningful work. So that's me.
That's awesome. Yes. And what about you, Brent? Could we hear a little bit about your work as well?
For sure, Shruti. It's good to see Amy again. So Brent Edwards, I'm founder of Brent Canada Experiences. So this is really my passion project, and I feel very strongly about the need to help newcomers become successful in Canada. I'm a very passionate Canadian. I've lived in a number of different parts of the country, the West Coast and Quebec as well. And newcomers are such a important part of our economic engine, bring creativity, a vitality and dynamism to our country. I've just seen so many examples where newcomers have struggled, and we know from research that the #1 challenge for newcomers coming to Canada and establishing their careers is a lack of a professional network. So I've been networking my whole life in some form or another, and felt this is an area that I can help. I actually set up Brent Canada Experiences as a passion project. Well, I was looking for work myself after having gone through a reorg. So I know what some of the people are going through that use and the companies that use it, Amy's services. I think it's really important to support newcomers and established Canadians, especially at this time with COVID and the devastation that's had on the economy. But there still is a light out there, and we'll do our little bit to see what we can do to help the economy and help newcomers.
It's a great thing that both of you are doing, and thank you for the work that you do. Now, any discussion in this session today would seem off if we don't address that, it's been a tough year that we've just gone past. And of course, that highlights the importance of networking all the more. And, that's one of the first things that any newcomer to the country would hear about, that networking is really important and doesn't need to be for professional reasons. It's just when you go out and meet people, right? You're introducing yourself, you're learning about other people, you're just creating that community for yourself. So before we talk about that, let's address why do you think, or what a year it's been. So what are your thoughts there as to why now is the best time to be focusing on networking in a different way?
I thought Amy and I had talked earlier just about maybe it might help the viewers to know a little bit about how we actually met, because it kind of ties into the story. So maybe I'll go first.
Yeah.
So I this would have been the time when I was thinking about Brent Canada experiences. I was looking for work, and I'd had experience in marketing. Most of my career has been in business to business. I was looking for potentially an employer close to home, and one of the companies I was looking at was Granger. Well, it turned out there was a director of marketing there named Amy Davies. And I was probably within a couple of days of actually submitting my resume in for one of her marketing positions on her team. My search took another turn. Very happy in terms of how it's worked out for me. But then I saw Amy promoting her book online a couple of years, I guess about a year later, Spark in the Dark, and decided to engage with her online and, pay it forward a bit in terms of some encouragement. And then we actually ended up meeting for coffee and found that we were both interested and passionate about helping newcomers around the employment space, and said, maybe at some point we could work together. So that's brings us to today.
Yeah.
So we met through networking.
And we met through networking. We also met because Brent was a generous networker, I would say. And before we even I actually reached out to him because he was commenting so much on my content because he was really engaged with it. And he was being really supportive of what I was doing, as he said. And I thought, wow, this person really stands out to me. And I'm going to reach out. And we met for lunch. And it's, we've kept in touch ever since then. I've gone to some events he's hosted. He's gone to some events that I've been part of. And so our networks have kind of merged.
Absolutely.
So that's amazing to hear that you're actually not just going to be sharing tips. You have personal experiences to share about networking, and that's how the two of you met.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But when it comes to this past year, I think what's happened is we're starting to enter what some people are calling the next normal, right? This pandemic has lasted a very long time. We're all starting to get used to this lifestyle, and that means businesses are solving for this new world. And now that they're getting more comfortable transacting in this type of environment, they're actually able now to start hiring and thinking about business growth, because everyone was on pause and then panic and then pause and then, oh, is there a light at the end of the tunnel? And now it's like, we know this is going to last a while longer. So everything's starting to normalize. So now is a very good time to start really getting yourself out there again in a meaningful way. And I know we're going to talk about how to do that, so I'm not going to cover that now. But now is a time to really get out there and start engaging with your network and actively looking for work.
As you said, I think there's also another element to how the pandemic may have affected Of course, job search is only online now. Networking is only online. So many things that, that human to human connection, that personal touch that we had, or, just going out there, networking, a huge part of it is actually attending group networking sessions, going to events, that energy, enjoying that as well. All of that is now suddenly virtual. So we'll talk about that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I think before we start discussing how one can plan their careers and get better at networking, it's also important to understand that a lot of times when we have newcomers coming to Canada, immigrants moving here, they're moving from different home countries where the idea of career planning, advancement, and networking might be different. So what are your thoughts there, Brent? How would you say that, what are the cultural differences there, or in the understanding or the treatment of networking, and how one looks at progressing in their career?
Yeah, so I think that networking is something where I guess established Canadians, people who've either grown up here or moved here a while ago, are used to, and it's just kind of an accepted way of doing business. And there are a number of other markets I've interacted with recently, and whether it's the U.S. or Australia or Ireland or the U.K., where that's the way business is done. There's other places where there's networking being done, but it's not necessarily that you're going to connect with people who are strangers. There may be people within your broader family connections, neighborhood connections, community connections, and I think it can be a struggle in terms of some of the cultural differences and nuances. And those are some of the things that I pick up on in the work that I'm doing with a lot of newcomers, is they're struggling with, it's like, I know the language, I know the business, but I'm not sure what's appropriate. Like, how often do I reach out? How often do I follow up? I don't want to be annoying. I want to be respectful, but not too differential. So it's those nuances that people are struggling with. And I think some of it's also assumptions people may make before they come to the country about, I have a background in a certain industry. They have this industry, so let's say it's financial services. It's like, I was in banking in my home country. I've come to the new country. They have banking as well, but there are like regulatory differences. There are ways that business is done in terms of with suppliers and with customers. And it's a lot of the nuances is where there's challenges, and understanding Canadian business culture and what it's all about can take some time. And if there's something we can do to help accelerate that, I think that would really help with the newcomers.
Yeah.
Amy, what are your thoughts? How is networking, or the idea of approaching one's career, different in Canada?
One of the things that I notice when I interact with new Canadians is depending on where someone's coming to Canada from, the way they interact in their own culture is different from how we engage as Canadians. So we're not a formal culture. And so when I see a person email me on LinkedIn and say, "Hi, madame," that isn't, or madam, or whatever it is. Canadians generally will say, "Hi, Amy," and that's accepted whether you know someone or you don't. And when we are coming in, whether we come into a new organization, because I work in the onboarding space as well, we want to try to give signs that we fit in. So when I talk about onboarding, it's learning the acronyms and the language of a business. But when it comes to coming to Canada or a new country, we want to try to mirror how people communicate and make sure that we're not standing out, and people will feel like we're very far away from them, like we're not going to be able to relate to them. So that makes it more difficult. So look at how other people are engaging with each other that have been here longer, and then try to mimic that correspondence. The other thing I was going to say, and this is when you're reaching out to people, there's a real easy fix. And by the way, my grammar is not great all the time. I have a little secret. I use a plugin called Grammarly.
So do I.
So do I.
So it's not just for people who may have language barriers. We're all quietly using it in the background. but it will be such a good way for any mistakes that you've made to be flagged, and it helps you correct them all. It's like 2 seconds and it's free. There's a basic package. That's all I use. It's free. And that way you can use, if you're saying, hi, Amy, and then you're generally speaking, there's not grammatical errors in your message. It will make you more relatable to the people that you're trying to interact with. And relatability when we're strangers with people can be a really important way to make meaningful connections.
Absolutely, that's a great tip, and I use Grammarly all the time because that's the thing. With the language, it's finding the right tone and pace and wording. It can be tricky. The other thing I find is around idioms, and those are sayings that we're used to. And I remember having a conversation with one of my clients, and this was actually before he became a client, and we were talking on the phone, and this is before pandemic, and I said, yeah, I'm looking forward. I'll be downtown. I'll be in your neck of the woods. And anyway, so we met up, and then after we became a client, he said, you were talking about necking in the woods. What did you mean? And I said, no, that's kind of, I'm going to be in your neighborhood. But I've noticed when I've done briefings around Canadian business culture, we'll do a section on idioms, and some of the business idioms are pretty common, but some of the just colloquialisms that we use when we're using English, but we're really speaking in, it can be a code sometimes. And if you're not picking up on those phrases, you're missing a lot of the context, and that can cause confusion and make you stand out, unfortunately, as Amy was saying, and not a positive way for building relationship.
And that's a great point, Brent. And the other thing to do is, if you don't know, you can Google it. And
Absolutely.
what I Google everything, like, what does your neck of the woods mean? And then it will be explained in plain terms, and that will help.
Because unfortunately, a lot of us don't speak in plain terms.
That's right.
Use all these shortcuts in our conversation.
That's what I was about to get to, that it's not just about relatability and, idioms that Brent mentioned over here. It's that first impressions matter, right? It's that first time that you're either connecting with someone in person or you're sending across a message, and you don't really want to leave any room for confusion there or mistakes for somebody else to, interpret the message the wrong way.
And at first, like with the book and my business, I talk a lot about imprinting. And we say that first impressions are so meaningful, but what's happening is actually a cognitive experience. It's like we're taking a picture that's hardwired into our brain when we initially interact with someone, whether that's in writing or in person. And once we have established belief system about someone, it's really hard. It's an uphill battle to change that belief system, which is why, and I know we're coming to this, but which is why I would say be very careful about what we're asking. If we're asking for anything, how we're asking and what we're asking for, and when is the right time to ask for something. Because as soon as you ask someone for something, you've given them a job. And if it's the first time you're messaging them, they know as soon as they respond to you, they've got a job to do. And they're like, everybody's having a hard time in their own way right now, and taking on other people's challenges is another, it's adding to your stress as well, right?
And I've found examples where just building what you've said, one of the networkers I was working with in who's out of Philadelphia was talking about making it's like a bank deposit. And I guess this comes back to my brief time in the consumer banking business. But you need to make deposits into that relationship before you can make a withdrawal. And some of the things that Amy what you're talking about was people are going into debt a bit because they're withdrawing before they've actually deposited enough into that relationship.
Yeah.
So how else would you say that one can add value to this networking relationship? It's both about give and take. So how can one offer value as well in the first time that they're connecting with someone?
Oh, there's so many ways in terms of adding value, which really a lot of newcomers have strengthened. So, newcomers have international experience, which not as many established Canadians do. They have experience working across different cultures, working across different borders, working in import, export, and the trade, whatever field that they're in. And it goes beyond likes and comments, but some tricks around, if you can be like the first person to comment on the LinkedIn post by an influencer, and you put the ad, you put their name, but show in those comments how much you care and how much you can add value. It can only be like a short paragraph. That's one where you'll actually be seen, and more likely to be seen by the person who's posting it. Use of Twitters, set up a Twitter account to your LinkedIn, so you're posting on both. There's a lot of value you add through the follow-up. Follow-up is incredibly important. You can set this, have these great conversations, but unless you're following up, people won't remember you. I mean, a lot of it comes back to you're building rapport, you're building trust, and you're demonstrating credibility, and that's what you're trying to do through these interactions, whether it's online or in person. It's are you a person that can be trusted? And we talk about, there's that expression about, you are, it's not who you are, it's it's who you know, but really it's more about who can trust you. And that, I think Seth Godin had written about that as something that's really important. So there's so many different ways that you can provide value.
Yeah.
That's a great point. Who can trust you? I love that. I hadn't really thought about it.
That's Seth Godin. That's not myself.
That's okay. Take credit. You're the one who's here.
There we go.
But I would actually think about setting aside time in your day to give. So if every day I try to do a little something and spend time either giving someone an endorsement on LinkedIn, or I'm really LinkedIn person. I'm, Brent's better than me. He's on Twitter and probably Instagram and everything. I'm just on LinkedIn.
Not so much Instagram, thank you.
But I would say if you really put time every day, take even 5 minutes and say, for these 5 minutes, I'm going to give to my network, whether that's like their content, especially when people write original content. I write a lot of original content. So you're looking to see who's liking it because it's an extension of yourself, or you're helping someone else in some way. The world is, as they say, is a mirror, right? And a lot of that good will come back to you. So it's worth investing that time to give. I know that Tony Robbins he says that in order for a relationship to last, go to your relationships as a place you go to give and not a place you go to take. And I know when I work with job seekers, they are so, preoccupied, and I understand why, with getting a job, but that's their preoccupation. It's not the people in their network's preoccupation. The people in their network have their own priorities and their own things that they need. So we have to think about how are we going to fit in comfortably into the lives of the people in our networks.
And to the points that you raised here, one of those was relatability. And I see a question by Luis Miranda, which is, in a multicultural environment, like a city like Toronto, what works for me is to be very respectful and clear on what I want to say. So this person says that, they want to be really respectful and clear in their conversation, but maybe that makes them lose the relatability. So what do you think about this? Are there any thoughts or advice here?
We have to be careful that we're not being so respectful that we look like we're very weak, if that makes sense. Because if we're being overly thankful for very little that's given to us, it can make us look like we're not worthy of the relationship. But, I know that the people joining tonight, they have great credentials. They have something to give. So try not to be too submissive, if that makes sense. Because eventually, when you're building your relationships, you want to build relationship of equals. So looking at it in that perspective, and one thank you is enough. Overthanking can be a little bit of a problem. I hope that makes sense and I was clear. But sometimes people can overdo the thanks or the accolades for someone who has helped them, if that makes sense.
So with what with my understanding from this, and my takeaway would be that stick to being your original self, right? You don't have to change that in any way. It's just that formality that one brings in the first conversation, or that initial time that you're reaching out could be avoided, because it's nice to be direct. It's nice to talk and get going with that discussion. Getting to know each other would be most important, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So, Amy, I'll also ask you about, specifically when it comes to networking around this time. Now, I mentioned this earlier, that the pandemic has changed the things for us. The rules of the game have possibly been mixed a little. And we've also reached a point wherein there's a little bit of, or maybe a lot of Zoom fatigue too. Now, Zoom is just one platform, but where all meetings are online, networking is online, our job search is online, our interviews are online. So what would you want to say about virtual networking, and how one can do it right?
It's a tough one, right? Because, Brent and I, we spend our lives networking, and I think we probably still make mistakes. I don't know about you, Brent, but
for sure. Absolutely.
First of all, we have to go in there understanding that everybody's kind of struggling through this. So yes, you're going to certainly get people who have fatigue, not just Zoom fatigue, but life fatigue. You have people with little kids at home, and being mindful of what they might have a job, but that doesn't mean everything is perfect, right? So being mindful that you're not over asking, but at the same time, put feelers out there, and maybe avoid asking for a job. Because when you're asking for a job, you're asking for something very specific. And if the person doesn't have a job open on their team, that ends the conversation. Whereas you can say something like, I'm new to Canada. This is the field I'm looking at. Do you have 15 minutes so that I can ask you some advice to help me break into the Canadian market? Right? That's a really nice way. And then say, I totally understand if this is not a good time for you. I'll reach out in another few weeks and see if you have some time available then. So you've done two things. You've identified with them by expressing that you understand that this is a tough time and they might not have time, or that a busy time for these Zoom calls like we talked about. And then you've also made it clear that you're not going to be pushy, and you've given yourself permission to reach out to them in another 3 weeks and just say, hey, remember I emailed you, or it will be on your LinkedIn string. I emailed you a few weeks ago. I would still love your perspective. Let me know if you have 15 minutes in the next week or so. And then if the person says yes, make the scheduling very easy for them. Don't keep going back and forth. So there's one tool that's very simple, but we have to be careful with it. And I feel like I'm not going to have all the time in the world to explain it right now, so I'll make it really quick. There's services like one called Calendly.
Yes.
And Calendly you can use for free, and you can just send them your link and they can book a time that works. But what you want to be careful of is that you don't make it sound like you've asked for their time and now you're making them do the work of booking you. So you give them an option. Say, you can either use this link and find a time that works for you because you're trying to adapt to them. And then guess what? It's going to set everything up for us. I'll send you the Zoom link. Zoom is free if you don't go over 45 minutes on your call. I think it's still free. And then you've done all the work. So make it very simple. And apparently research shows that if you don't want to use Calendly, if you don't want to give them 3 options. 3 is the magic number. and just say, I'm available Monday from 9 till 12, Tuesday from this time to this time. Give them options, because even if they can't fit into those options, they'll say, I'm not available then, but I am available at Thursday at 3 o'clock. Will that work? And immediately get back to them and start your answer with yes, because yes is a very pleasing word cognitively for people who mother tongue is English. No is a very bad word to use. So don't try not to say, no, I can't meet, because no, we have a negative cognitive response to that word. Say, yes, this time works for me. I know that was a lot to take in. You're recording this, so I'm sure there'll be a playback on YouTube. But those are the tips that I would give. Make it as easy as possible, as few back and forth as you can, and the person will get, like, they'll get you. They'll appreciate that.
So that's some amazing advice, I think, and it's great that we were recording as well. So this is almost like a template for people to refer to when, you know, they're reaching out to others. So thank you for that, Amy.
And I don't want to take over, but because I know Brent has some great advice.
I'm back.
The only last thing I'll say is, if you've said 15 minutes, do not go over 15 minutes without getting permission to do that during the conversation. Let the person know when you get on the call, I know we have 15 minutes. And then after 7 minutes, say, I know we have, you know, only a few minutes left. I just have one more question. Do not, without their permission, keep going and going for 30 minutes, because then you've disrespected your initial request, unless they say, don't worry, I've got time.
Which is a good sign. And if they go longer, but it's on them to make that decision. But you're showing respect, like exactly with what you were saying about the timing and checking in with them. Absolutely. You know, I had a situation with a newcomer I talked to a couple of days ago, and he was based on a referral from a friend of mine. So I took, you know, half an hour to speak to him, and it was this part about, you know, asking for a referral, and he'd heard that, you know, you should really, you know, not leave the call until you've got 2 names of other people to talk to. And, you know, we talked a bit about social capital and about, you know, the bank account and, you know, investing. And so, you know, where you have a level of trust with them, that you can trust your network with them. But then the suggestion I made to him was around going to an online conference. And, you know, within, you know, a few strokes on Google, it turned out there was a conference in the financial services industry that he was interested in. He'd never heard of this association. Because it's COVID, almost every single conference now has gone online. And guess what? The prices come down. So they're more affordable. They're also much more open, potentially, with letting people attend who went before. And it was like, okay, well, if I was to go to the conference or connect with some people connected with it, I'm not going to meet 1 or 2. I'm going to meet like 20 or 25 people, which is just a lot more value that you're able to, you know, ask for and receive than 1 or 2 referrals. So
that's a really good point, going to these conferences, because then you get opportunities to network. I know I've used the Hopin
system. Yep, absolutely.
But what I would say, and this has happened to me before, that I've used these Hopins, and you have 3 minutes and you get on with someone and they say, okay, let me tell you about myself. I do this, I do this, I do and there's like 5 seconds left, and they haven't even asked you about yourself.
Yeah.
Even though you really need a job and you're trying to sometimes listening is the best situation. You will look even more intelligent when you listen. That's proven. So instead of getting on that network moment and saying, this is all about me and I'm looking for a job and this and this, say, hey, tell me a little bit more about what you do. And that will shock people, because no one says that, right? And say, you know, and then say, oh, that's like I love that, or this, or that sounds really interesting. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about me. I'm from here, I moved here. I'm really trying to network because I'm looking for work. And they're going to be a lot more receptive to you. You're not going to get that chance with everybody, but it's just a great way to start. Start with generosity and listening, and actively listening. not just listening, waiting, because a lot of us do that. We listen and we're waiting for our opportunity to speak, but really actively listening. Someone had a question.
Yes, so I was actually about to just ask you that you shared a magic number when it came to the time, 3 options. Is there a magic number when it also comes to booking the time slot? So the question is whether it's 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Is there a magic number there too?
So I'd say, if we're talking about like an informational interview or a first meeting, 30 minutes is probably the max that people are willing to give. And even if you're down to probably 20 minutes now, because, Amy's in her house, I'm in my house, Trudy, you're in your house. I've got, my son doing university work upstairs. We've got a cat running around. My wife's on the middle floor. So there's a lot of distractions. So you need to keep it really short and brief. It's not to say that this is one call and you're never going to talk to the person again. If you listen and use the generosity approach that Amy's talking about, and number one word for me is curiosity. Curiosity about other people, what they do. And Amy also talked about in terms of giving and showing value. 15, 20 minutes, the people will have a good impression. You'll have made a good impression on them. And they'll probably want to connect with you again, whether online or offline. So I would say go for 15, 20 minutes. I don't know, Amy, what do you think?
I think 15, 20 minutes. And I'm just going to apply one caveat because I love what you said, but I would modify that slightly. So when we're meeting someone in a networking situation, we know nothing about them. When you're on Hopin, you don't even know who's coming next. So there's no expectation that you prepared and know anything about their background. So asking them, tell me more about yourself, is legitimate. But if you have set up a meeting with someone and you've asked them for their time, and I would say 15 or 20 minutes, like you said, Brent, because 30 minutes, like then they might give you 30 minutes, right? But, and you've given them a little free time before their meetings, which they love. But when you get to that meeting, if you're going to ask them about themselves, it better be a very specific question based on what you've seen on their business site, like, so the LinkedIn site. So, I see that you used to work at such and such a company. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience there? So it's got to be specific to them, because otherwise it seems like you haven't done your homework. And go to their LinkedIn before, because they can see that you visited their LinkedIn in many cases, but never bring up anything that's on their personal site. So if you somehow saw their Facebook, never bring up.
No. Exactly. Exactly. But it's good advice. I think, being in sales or business development, like you do your homework in advance, because you're only going to get a chance to ask a couple of questions. And like all those, closed-ended questions, yes, no, they're not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah.
You want to show that you have the curiosity and the generosity, that you want to be, the reason you're talking to them, there's probably a specific question that you're investigating. So you're almost going in as a researcher. And, Amy and I both have background in market research, and you want to ask a question that's high impact. It's not too threatening to them, but it gets at their expertise, whether it's in a particular sector or a particular industry or a particular field, because you're really there in a lot of cases to learn. You're trying to learn about the Canadian business culture. You're trying to learn about the Canadian economic culture. You're trying to learn about how businesses are operating in this economy with COVID. Where are the pain points within their business? And by asking a well thought out question, you're going to demonstrate, that you've done your research, your homework, you're interested, you're genuine, and that you value what they're going to say.
In fact, Brent, I was actually about to come to you to ask that we've been talking about networking with the mindset of applying for jobs when you're looking to advance your career. But there's also networking for people who are business owners and, getting into entrepreneurship. So what's your advice there? Does it vary? The approach, does it vary here?
So it's something I find curious, and I think I'm going to explore probably more with my business. There are a tremendous number of exceptional networkers a lot of them are solopreneurs and small business people because they need to do that to, one, identify suppliers, identify customers, and identify potential business partners. They absolutely need to do that. And it's a marketing strategy. It's, yes, sales is part of it, but in a lot of ways, it's a key component of how they do marketing. So if you look at any business that's involved with referrals, so whether that are real estate agent, people who are selling cars, people who are in insurance, financial services, financial advisors, they all need to be really good at networking. And what I'm surprised about is that we are connecting newcomers with more of these small business people because they really have a lot of the skills and experience that the newcomers could benefit from. So I would look at that. There are so many opportunities for networking, which I've explored around small businesses. So I've been invited through some of my work on LinkedIn and liking and commenting. I actually was invited to a networking event that happens every month in Melbourne, not Melbourne, Florida, but Melbourne, Australia, like in the state of Victoria. And the host of that event actually rescheduled her event. So with the time difference from Toronto, which I think was like 14 hours, I was actually able to attend. And that was so great. I've been to events in Scotland. I was on an event with a networking group in Dublin, Ireland, about a week ago. I've been on events in Boston, Massachusetts, with people from all over the world. So COVID, yes, it's restricting it's so challenging in terms of our work-life balance and time and that. But the world is your oyster. There are so many ways that you could connect with people, maybe not in Canada, but who knows, people know each other, people are connected. And by connecting through some of these other international opportunities, a lot of them which are fairly low cost, it is something to build your credibility, build your confidence. And then when you're looking to grow your business or looking for that, great job that you found, through networking and through building your LinkedIn profile, you're going to have much more confidence from having gone to some of these events with some of these small business people who are so good at networking.
And by the way, we're all out there making a ton of mistakes. I, again, hold my hand up and say that I've made a lot of them. And the good news is that you go to these events, you can make all kinds of mistakes and learn from them. And then, as long as you do that reflection and you say, okay, that conversation didn't feel like it went very well to me. How could I have changed the outcome? How could I have done things differently? So the more we kind of put ourselves out there, I say to my job seekers, if you're not feeling rejected, you're not doing the work. Because as soon as you get out there, you're going to feel rejected. I feel rejected all the time. I run a business and some people really want to work with First 30 and other people really don't, right? So you get that rejection. If you're not feeling it, again, you're not doing enough. So put yourself out there, make some mistakes, learn from those mistakes, and get better and better every time. And if you have a friend who lives, who's grown up in Canada or been here for a number of years, have some mock conversations with them. Have some, like, what I mean by that is have some fake conversations with them where you're kind of like, it's role playing and they're pretending to be at a conference, and you get on and work that through, and they can say, oh, maybe handle this way, or I didn't really like when you said that. If I didn't know you, I might think this. And that will help you prepare. It's the same way that if you're interviewing, that you don't just show up at an interview, you actually get a friend to interview you and ask you all the same questions that an interviewer might ask, and you can prepare and practice your answers that way, so you show up prepared.
Absolutely.
You rightly said, networking, job search, business, when it comes to just interacting with people, all of these go hand in hand. And I have a few more things to ask you about that and advancing in one's career as well. But a few questions here that I see related to what the two of you just shared. So what I'll do is I'll just share, I'll ask a question each to both of you. So to Amy, what do you have to say to this? That we have a question here that says that, what are the ways to continue networking with the same person after their first meeting? So a quick answer here, and I'll move to Brent for another one.
Right away, email them, thank them for their time. And then let them know if there was follow-ups, get those follow-ups done right away. So if you said you were going to send them something, send them something. If they talked about a topic they're interested in, if you see an interesting article on that topic, send it to them. Offer them a few things that you think will help. If they're in the business of insurance and you see a great article on insurance a few weeks later, send that to them and just check in and say, hey, how are you doing? And give them a very, very brief little update if you have one. And as soon as you land a job, make sure you let them know and thank them.
Awesome. So that's great advice there. Brent, the next one's for you. So there's someone who's sharing that they read a post from a recruiter on LinkedIn very recently, discouraging job seekers from networking with them via the inboxes regarding open roles. So what's your view on this? Is this an acceptable practice? Have you come across other examples like this wherein recruiters are discouraging others to interact with them, network with them for open roles?
I guess if I go back to my own experience with recruiters, I think Amy probably works closer with recruiters than I do. But what I found is, again, you want to demonstrate your credibility with recruiters. Now, the recruiters definitely have a role, but the recruiters, my understanding is they're working for the companies. So they're looking to find, people who would be a perfect fit for the organization. The consideration I'd say with recruiters is because they are looking for a fit, in a lot of cases, they're looking for someone who's doing the same role at a competing company. And I've been recruited into roles. And if you're looking at all to change paths, if you're looking to change into a different field, if you're looking to move into a different sector, this idea of demonstrating how adaptable you are, it really is not going to work with a lot of recruiters, because they're getting paid if they get a fit, and that person will stay with that organization. So yes, I would make yourself available to recruiters. I would connect with them, but it's one tool in your toolbox in terms of your job search. And again, really, what is your goal? Like, are you looking to stay in the same field? And I would say, even with COVID, you need to have like 3 plans. You need to have 3 possibilities. You got your plan A, plan B, plan C. You've got, stay in the field or move to a different role, move to a different sector. Are you willing to relocate? These are all kind of questions in terms of what you're looking for, because the recruiters are looking for something very specific. Not sure if Amy
another
wants
question.
Yep.
I actually have another one.
Sure.
So Amy did answer a question that I see here from Milena about making mistakes, and she shared a wonderful answer. So there's another question here from Emma for you, Brent.
Yep.
Any suggestions when it comes to networking for someone in academia?
Sure. So I guess what I've
Would you
noticed
say anything differently when it comes to networking? Or are the rules the same?
Yeah, I think that some sectors are much more involved in, say, LinkedIn as a networking platform. You might want to look for specific platforms where academics are there. And again, some of it depends on if you're looking to network to actually get into academia or move. There's all kinds of levels of academia. You've got universities, you've got colleges, you also have career colleges. So some of them are more involved in some of the social media we're talking about, and others less so.
Now, Amy, I'd actually want to ask you a little bit more about career advancement. Networking is, of course, something that one does at different stages in their career. When you're just starting out, when you're developing it, when you're trying to move on into a different role. But a lot of people, when they move to Canada, and especially that's the case with newcomers and immigrants, they struggle with finding a job in their own field, something that they had established their careers in for many, many years, or may have had great success in. So, how would you say that one can approach this situation positively if they come across a situation wherein they're not being able to find meaningful employment in their field? How
Mhm.
can one use their transferable skills that they have and stay positive and keep advancing their career, maybe try different options? It's a bunch of questions I asked you all at
Yeah,
once.
and they're tough. They are tough ones to answer because we all make compromises and sacrifices to do different things. So I can only speak from my own experience. I moved to England after I graduated from university. I did have some work experience in Canada, but I had to do, and I know that's a very different experience from a lot of new Canadians that come to Canada because there is the language barrier, which I didn't have there. So it was a lot easier, but it was still really tough. I didn't have a network. I had to build that up, and I started temping, and I was typing menus for the cafeteria in one organization. And I actually started out typing menus, and internally, there was a job that was only posted on the intranet site. So I was always watching, and that's the internal website for the company that only employees saw, but I had access to that. And I was pretty bored, so I would search it all the time. And I found a great job and I applied for that job. But that was a year after I had been there. So the very first thing I did was I just swallowed my pride and I just took any work that I could get. And as soon as I got into that job, I networked and networked and networked. And I did that like 10 different times because I was a temp. So I kept going into different organizations for a few months here, a few months there. And it was not glamorous work at all. And I did that and I just networked until I knew enough people in the organization. When I applied for this job, I was already known and liked. So don't forget to get out there and network when you're in an organization, no matter what role you are. Just say hi to people. Of course, it's difficult now because of COVID and we're not in offices. When I moved back to Canada, I actually had trouble finding a job in Canada. So here I am now with 6 years of work experience. I worked for Unilever, one of the top global companies to work for, and I really struggled to find a job. And guess what I did? I started a dog walking business. And I walked dogs and I picked up their poop for a year. And then I found another job. So my point is that we should reset our expectations. We've made a decision. I made the decision to relocate, and I did it twice. And I had to work hard to get into the market and then get back into the market. It was far more difficult than I thought it was going to be. So reset expectations, especially now with COVID. We may have to take a job we don't want to take. And then as soon as you get that job, do that job really, really well. Meet as many people, whether it's virtually or outside of the organization. Because when you're in an organization and I worked at Rogers, you both work at Rogers, say, we both work here. I'd love your advice. Can I get together with you? And you're their colleague, whether you work in another team or not. And they might be more willing to give you their time. So I hope that helps. It's a very, very big question. I just find that people come to a new market like I did when I went to England, and I had these amazing expectations of what I was going to be able to accomplish. I had my degree, I was highly qualified, I had work experience, but I couldn't get the job I wanted. It was just, I had to put in my time there. And I didn't like it, but I did it.
And it's similar. I graduated from university in British Columbia and wanted to either work in public relations or work for a major hotel company. And I realized fairly quickly on that back in the day, there weren't jobs like that in Vancouver. So I moved to Toronto. I looked for work for a month. The only person I knew was my sister in Hamilton. 3 days before I was to fly back to Vancouver, I had a job interview. It was supposed to be for half an hour. It lasted 2 hours. 3 weeks later, I got invited to take the job. And the job I actually filled had not been posted yet when I had the interview. So I moved here to Toronto, but I still knew nobody, and I was in sales, so I need to meet people in a hurry. So it's very challenging. The analogy I use is people have thoughts about what they want to do for their career. And if you look at a map of North America, there are 2 major highway systems in Canada and the US. If you're in Canada and you want to go from coast to coast, there's pretty much 1, maybe 2 highways you can take, pretty much the Trans-Canada. What I would encourage job seekers to do is to look at the US like an interstate highway system. So if you're going from Los Angeles to New York, you can probably get there about 12 different ways. You can get to the same destination, but there are many different highways and routes you can take, and you should look at your career that way, because doing on one route, there is so many twists and turns, but take those to your advantage and use those other opportunities to look at places, companies, sectors that other people may not consider, where there's less competition and you can stand out and be successful.
That's so great.
Well,
Shri,
that's
I just
great.
want to say one thing because I know we're wrapping
Sure.
up. I want to say that, first of all, that was a great answer, Brent. I loved it. But everyone on this call tonight, anyone who's joining on YouTube, anyone who's watching this video, you're high potential. So you're ahead of the game because you are here right now doing this. The people that succeed are the people that go the extra mile, spend time after dinner on a Thursday evening to join sessions like this. So if you're here right now or you're listening to this recording, you are a step ahead of everybody else. So give yourself so much credit for being here, because you should be really proud. That's an accomplishment in and of itself, that you put yourself out there, people asking questions. You've demonstrated that you're a high caliber person and professional.
And that's genuinely some amazing words of encouragement for anyone attending the session. I do see a few questions, some of which we've answered, a lot of comments that agree with what you've said, and thanking you for the amazing advice and insights that you've shared. Before we do end the session, I'd actually quickly want to come back to the two of you and ask you if there are any last words here, or piece of advice, any do's and don'ts. And definitely what we would be doing, this is for the viewers that I'd like to share. I see a few questions by by Anu as well, asking for resources. So what we will be doing is, with both Brent and Amy, we'll be asking them for any resources that they'd like to suggest. And we'll compile that and share that with you in our communication after the webinar as well. So we'll make sure that their contacts, about their companies, the information there, and some resources that they'd like to share, we'll be sending across to you. So any last piece of advice that you have? Amy, would you like to go first?
Okay, well, I would say that First 30, Brent does some amazing work, and he works in this space, so he's a great person to reach out to find out about his services. First 30 offers a lot of free webinars, and I'm going to share the information with Shruti so you guys can get access to them. And next Tuesday, I'm running a session about job search mistakes. As you can see, I love talking about mistakes because we learn from them. And I would say that would be my final message, is keep engaging with this type of content. Get out there, make a ton of mistakes, and know that the rest of us, you may feel alone doing that, but like I said, we all make mistakes, so that's how we learn. You're in a new culture, it's not easy, and of course you're going to make mistakes. If you weren't making mistakes, you're not human.
Definitely.
Amazing.
Brent, before you share your last piece of advice, a quick question here that I see. The viewers want to know if they can send you connection requests on LinkedIn. Are you both open to that? Is that a yes?
What I would say is, and this advice, personalize it. Make sure you personalize it. What's the reason we should be connecting? And it's really, it's anyone that you're connecting with. Personalize the request. Tell us why it makes sense to connect. So what I would say, 3 pieces of advice. 1, get Amy's book, Spark in the Dark, that imprint. I remember that imprinting section from her book in terms of first impressions. Excellent. Terrific advice, lots of great personal stories that will impact you and help you. Second, we're starting a podcast with a business partner of mine, Career Welcome Network podcasts. We're going to do it every week or two. So I'll be next to Thursday night. Last piece of advice would be treat your network like a stock portfolio. You want to be diversified. If you were coming into the pandemic and you had invested in, let's say, stocks around accommodations and cruises and hotels, and you had your whole stock portfolio and your entire network into, say, the hospitality space, love the space because I spent a lot of time in it, your stock, unfortunately, your stock portfolio would be down. You need to look to diversify your portfolio. You never know who the people are that you're meeting. You don't know who they were. You don't know who they are. And you also don't know who they will become. So never discount in terms of the people you could potentially connect with and the difference that they can make for you. And more importantly, the difference you can make to them.
Wonderfully
That's
put.
great.
And to anyone asking us where you can find this recording, you will be able to see this recording on our YouTube channel later as well. And we will also be sharing it with you in our communication after the webinar. Typically in the next 24 to 48 hours, you will receive an email from us wherein we will share the recording and also share the resources that both Amy and Brent will share with us. So thank you once again to Amy and Brent for your advice, for your experiences. You know, Amy, you started this session by talking about relatability, being relatable when it comes to networking. And I think both of you have shared such experiences that were more than relatable. I think both of you have come across as really relatable people.
Oh,
and there's so much to learn from what you said and your experiences too.
Thanks
So,
for having us.
thank you. Thank you for
Thank
being
you,
here.
Shruti.
It has been
Thanks, New
wonderful having you
Canadians.
with us.
Really
A
appreciate
quick, a few things to announce here for the viewers. You attended this session, which was of Café New Canadians, and it's brought to you by New Canadians. On your screens right now, you can see the websites that you can check out for to know more about what both Brent and Amy do. Like today, we will be bringing more sessions to you as part of Café New Canadians. So please do stay connected with us. Follow us on our social media channels. That way you can stay updated about our next upcoming sessions. You can also stay updated about the different stories that we put out. And do subscribe to our newsletter. It's a monthly newsletter that we send out straight to your inbox with more information. And please do watch us on Omni TV if you're in Canada. Check out our website and our YouTube channel for this recording and a lot more that we've done in the past. Once again, thank you so much. A quick thing to announce here would be we also have a Facebook group as part of New Canadians. So if you enjoyed this session, there's lots more of a community that we have there. You know, you can meet with other people, like-minded individuals, ask questions, share your inputs, and that would be lovely if you would decide to join our group as well. It's called New Canadians Connect, and we'd love to see you there and carry on this conversation there. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Okay, bye.